And so here we are. You already watched the action portion of the videos with the overlays, and now you're left questioning yourself, is this Cameron Vic's car? And that's a yes. And did this car just run a new personal best? That is also a yes. And some of you are like, man, doesn't this thing have a stock bottom end in it? Yeah, it has a stock long block in it, actually. So those are some of the details we're going to go over with. We're going to do a summary. We're going to talk about more of the stuff about the car and go on at length at other things. So the longer we get into this video, the more inundated with information you are going to be hit with. Okay, we're going to go over the quick summary. I believe this is a 06 Crown Vic. It has a 2005 furniture moving truck 6-liter that Cameron did disassemble, and he looked at everything and made sure it was okay. While he was in there, he knew he was going to be pushing this combo pretty hard, so he opened up the top ring gap to 22 thousandths and the lower to 26 thousandths. It has China head studs, which I'm not a huge fan of. I feel like they're weaker than stock bolts, but I digress. Let's move right along. It has Brian Tooley 660 Platinum spring kit and stock 317 cylinder heads. It has a Jarrett spec camshaft for his old combination, not even specified for this combo. He did the Powell machine bushing trunnion upgrade kit. He actually has chromoly push rods, and he has a Trailblazer SS or NNBS newer intake. He also lists that he has the nitrous outlet single nozzle. What I did was I sold him or gave him, I basically gave him my nitrous outlet kit for the cost of shipping from my old Colorado. So he has a very small nitrous jet in there that we've been messing with because we are pretty sure we're out of turbo or at least out of cam for this combination. It has the G Plus China 4-inch 4-bolt throttle body because his others would not fit, and for almost the cost of the adapter, you can get the entire throttle body. The other nice parts are it has a VS billet 80 millimeter T6 turbo and a VS Racing 4-inch intercooler and 3-inch piping kit, I believe, all from VS. It has the wastegate welded onto the turbine, the 60 or 50 millimeter wastegate. I'm not totally sure. It has a stock 4L80E transmission with a few small upgrades. It has a billet input and a billet forward hub. And he, since he does transmission stuff for a living, installed a Jake's D3 brake. So he has a trans brake and a 258 millimeter triple disc converter. All of this ends up going down a custom drive shaft into a stock Crown Vic rear axle housing with a bunch of modifications, like small things like 9-inch end housings, a little bit of reinforcement. I think Robert Maddox is his name. I might be totally wrong, but he's in Cameron's area. He does a bunch of really nice fab work. It has 373 gears, a spool, and 35 spline strange axles. And doing the suspension and everything all the way around is Viking shocks and coilovers. He's running a Mickey Thompson ET Street SS, not the Pro, which I'm sure he lists a lot of people think he's on the Pro, but he's not. It's the old tire. Other neat little upgrades are Mean Mike Fab Point roll bar in case, he has a issue at high speed with this car. He has 2 little girls he's got to take care of. Top all that stuff off. Engine management is a Holley Dominator that does engine trans, pump box, boost, ethanol, all of the good stuff, controlling everything. And real quick, fuel summary is MagnaFuel 4303 by itself and 210-pound Bosch injectors. So to add to this whole summary, this car has not been on a dyno in I think 2 years. I don't think the single turbo setup has been on the dyno at all. The old setup he had brought up here approximately 2 years ago, and we made 880 to the tire and quit. And he is, I think, thinking of coming up this year and leaning on this setup. There's a lot of stuff to consider at this point. He has a camshaft he would like to change to see if it picks up, since it's more, it's not that it's better, but it's better for this combination. The Little John Stage 2 he wants to try. So that's one of the things he wants to do. We want to try up in the nitrous. We're closing in on the top of the 3-bar map sensor. So he's ordering a 4-bar map, so we have a little bit more overhead for when we're leaning on it. So we can have a little bit of boost cut and a little bit of low 30-pound action. Like I also said, this car just recently had a 6-point cage put in it by me and Mike Fab, and it has belts and all sorts of other stuff. So it has some of the safety equipment required, mostly to keep safe, not really to appease the NHRA gods, since Cameron really doesn't do any NHRA events. There's no real reason for him to adhere to all of the rules, so just trying to keep himself safe. And as I mentioned before, and I will quickly try to summarize, this car was twin turbo, did have a 5.3 in it, and it had GT35s, which I believe are 6161s, or very similar to it. And Cameron had built a 6-liter slowly over time. Not built, but he just went over that newer one because he had an older Gen 3 rotted 5.3 in the car. Anyway, he had slowly over time collected all the parts to put this 6-liter in with the better stock rods. And when he did that, he did a turbo upgrade to the 7065s from VS Racing. This is when the car was air-to-water intercooled. This is when it had the Igloo tank and like the Rule bilge pump or whatever in the Igloo tank. And it was shortly after this, and he, I think, wanted to do it also, but I gave him a little nudge, and I was like, ditch all that stuff. Just go air-to-water. Might as well do single turbo. Build the turbo kit yourself. Have some fun. So he ended up building the turbo kit himself also, which I'll show some pictures of so you guys can get super triggered, because it's not pretty, but obviously it works. There is no denying that. And that's always the point that I try to drive, and I hope some of you see it and you go, you know, I can do that or better. And once you see that, you realize that you can have good results too. I also had said to Cameron, hey, why don't you record like a short thing, go over what you did, explain a little bit about what you have done recently and how it worked out and how your passes went Saturday. So here is Cameron's version of his own Rambletron next.
All right, so Saturday we went to the track. Went a couple of 930s back to back. What I normally do when I go to the track, I don't purposely do this. Like the first pass I make will just be complete junk. And I wasn't even going to talk about that pass, but then I thought about it, and I was like, we could use this as a teachable moment, or maybe it will confuse you guys more. The first pass, I just went up there and I just killed the tires. I didn't purposely do that, but I just did. It's a relatively new setup in the rear. I already have Viking coilover front shocks, front coilovers, double adjustable Crusaders. They sponsored me with those. They gave me a really good deal. And up until like a week ago, I had these QA1 single adjustables, and I was probably at the limit of those. So I reached out to Viking again, and Mike at Viking was like, "Yeah, we can sponsor you again." And they gave me another really good deal on the double adjustable rear Crusaders. So we just put those on Thursday night. Went to the track completely untested, but we had an idea of what it would want. Didn't know for sure. So we went up there and we got it wrong, and a couple things happened. The first pass, I let off the button and it just instantly killed the tires. When I was about 2 cars back in the line, I was thinking about it because we have nitrous, a little nitrous outlet kit. They sponsored me. They didn't even know it. Matt gave me his old kit, and we just have a dry nozzle. It sprays right here and before the intake air temperature sensor. It's only only 31 jet, so like a 35 shot. But when you're on 26 pounds of boost, it makes like 90 horsepower at the wheels on that little of a shot. So people that are like, oh, it's such a small shot, I would disagree. But anyway, not trying to get into a pissing match. So what happened was we have nitrous commanded to come on from 4,000 to 6,800. And, most people, nitrous Holly EFI guys, they have it set up, to spray at trans brake release. It just didn't even cross my mind because we changed converters this last year too and went to one that would actually stall a little bit higher on the trans brake. So anyway, my 2-step is at 4,000 and my nitrous comes on from 4,000 to 6,800. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, man, I think it's going to spray when I'm on the brake. And it did. I had to look at the data later, but it did. It sprayed it right on the brake. And so it was spraying while I was on the trans brake, and I let off the button. the rear shock settings weren't right, and it just instantly killed the tires. And what you'll see in the video is, I'm going to preface this with, I'm just an amateur. I know a little bit about suspension, so somebody will probably be sitting on their smartphone or on their computer just getting furious about what I'm about to say. But my car is a stock suspension. It's Crown Vics. All 98 plus Crown Vics are 4-link in the rear, so it's paired control arms. I have a pretty good instant setter. It's like up here somewhere. The anti-squat is positive, meaning it's over 100. So what that means is when you let off the brake, the wheel will separate from the body. Well, the tire will separate from the body. And what that does, it's ideal, in my opinion. So this is for a radial car. I'm not about that, no prep stuff where you crash your car everywhere. I like drag radial stuff because you can drive your car to the track. Anyway, but in drag radials, what you want to see is, assuming you have an anti-roll bar, because that's what keeps the rear end parallel. It doesn't do that farm truck crap where it leaves like that. But with a drag radial car, you want to see separation between the tire and the body. What that's doing there is it's planing the tire. And you achieve that by, I think I went to baselinesuspension.com. You can type in your mounting point height and all this stuff, and cam height and all these other, the weight, the corner weight, all that stuff, and you can get an idea of where your geometry is and if it's going to lend itself well to drag racing. So the first pass, when I let off the button, because I didn't have, or because I was spraying nitrous on the brake, and likely because my rebound is what it opens up. That always confuses me. I have to think about it. I would think like extension. I don't know if other shock companies call it extension, but Viking calls it rebound. Rebound is when it opens up. Compression is where it compresses, like the wheel or the tire goes into the body. So the first pass, we didn't have the rebound loose enough, and we were spraying. So I let off the button. It just instantly killed the tires. The tire didn't go in or out. It just stayed still, and it just knocked the tires off. And I'm not one of those people that just has to make a pass and just pedals the hell out of it the whole way. And your transmission guy will hate you if you do that. But so I let off the button, killed the tires, and I just putted down the track. So we looked at the data. I had like 3 really smart people there with me, my buddy Mike and Rory, and a couple other people. I know I can't count. But anyway, they looked at it. They were like, it didn't separate. And I was like, okay, we loosened the rebound a little bit. My buddy Jesse was there. He's pretty sharp too. Anyway, what you want the front to do, and radial versus the world cars, they don't have any travel. It seems like they just keep growing in the rear. Like the anti-squat opens up as they're going down the track. So my car isn't a radial versus the world car, but my car seems to like coming up a little bit. So we've got the rebound a little looser in the front, so it'll come up and the compression tight. So it's similar settings in the front rear. So it'll come up. In theory, when you do it right, it'll come up a little bit and just hang there because the compression is tighter, so it's not trying to compress. And you'll see in the video, the first pass, it just kills the tires. So the body doesn't lift, nothing happens. It just kills the tires, and I put down the tracks. And the second pass, we loosened up the rebound, changed some settings in the Holly. We pulled a little more timing because Holly is amazing. I mean, other ECUs can do this, but with Holly, we went to the time-based ignition retard, or I don't know if that's what it's called in Holly, but basically I can say when I let off the button, pull like 16 degrees on the hit. So I let off the button, and wherever the base timing is right there, it takes 16 away from that. And then I progress it back in over a second and a half, like 1.2 seconds or something like that. So yes, I know my car is slow. Some people are like, oh my God, I only went 143 to the 60 foot. I know. I'm working on my program. I could get up here and say, oh my God, there's so much more left in it. It's a terrible 60 foot and all that stuff. But I despise that phrase when somebody been on struggle street for years, and then they go make one pass and they're like, oh, yeah, I meant to do that. And they think that it's just like, oh, there's so much more left in it. And then like years later, they still haven't gone faster. It's just like, oh yeah. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
So it is, in my opinion, really cool to see how far this car has come. The other neat thing is recently he greatly simplified the setup and has learned a lot and is going faster. Obviously, a lot of this stuff didn't happen overnight. He has He went a little bit backwards this year, changing his gear ratio and converter. And it's important, I think, to highlight stuff like that because sometimes people do that and they're like, what the hell am I doing wrong? Well, it happens to a lot of people. So it was going pretty fast. It did go, man, I think it went 986 on the twins. And he put the single turbo on and changed a bunch of other things at the same time and slowed it down. And we were like, what the hell do we do? And he put his converter, I think he had 3 different converters in it until he settled on one he liked. The other reasoning is he works at a transmission shop, so he likes to change that stuff all the time. So he may have just overdone it back and forth a few times. Either way, the way it is now is working great. The other thing that we have applied to this car that I have learned over the years is trying to keep the car at a high RPM, which is difficult to get a converter that's perfect for a situation like this because you want, in my opinion anyway, you want to keep the car past peak torque at a high enough RPM where it can't really hurt itself, especially if it's heavy like this, especially if you're making this much power, but you also want it to couple well once it's sitting at high RPM to generate the mile an hour and basically get the power down to accelerate you because it's very easy to get a slippery converter that will go very high and never hurt anything but not go anywhere on the big end. So all of that combined, yeah, it takes a little bit to work that stuff out. So I want to highlight, it's not all puppies and rainbows. It did set him back for a little while. The other neat part is just seeing how far you can go on pump ethanol and a stock bottom end is never stops blowing my mind personally. So I always like showing stuff that can do that, and that's one of these things. If you had told me a couple of years ago that we'd be doing this, I would laugh and say, you're lying or something else, or that's got rods in it or something. You are fooling me somewhere along the way. Anyway, I like sharing updates about Cameron's Vic. He sends me all the info. I like doing the overlays, showing you guys some real world stuff, how it works, what's going on. Once again, no secrets here. So I think what I'll also do is get the latest tune file from him and I can update the cabinet in case you guys have Holly and you want to look and see all of the craziness that's going on with this. The other really neat thing that Cameron is doing is he's adding back pressure transducer and he's also adding a temperature sensor to the outlet of the turbo to see how effective the intercooler is. Just some small stuff like to just get more and more data points to learn how to effectively use what we've got and all of that. The ultimate goal is to learn what corners you can cut and which ones you cannot. So hope you all learned something. If you have any questions, let me know. If you want to see more about the car, I was thinking about doing some sort of Skype interview or something with Cameron, just so if you guys ask a whole bunch of questions in this video, we can go over them all in like a Jimmy Fallon interview style video. I was talking about that today. I think that would be pretty neat. Let me know what you think. Later, bye.